Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have you here. I hope you're having a good new year so far. The remaining members of my family now have COVID, including me. So if I get a clogged throat later, my apologies. I deeply appreciate our guests, Katy Battiest, Coffey and Brandy Semore, for joining us today. We are going to be in webinar format so that we can tape the program for future viewing by others. So please introduce yourselves on chat. I mean it. Please introduce yourselves. We want to connect you with each other. And I wanted to remind everyone that the fourth Friday of every month, we do a networking session. And the price of admission is now going to be bring a friend. So that is on the 29th. And it is going to be the highest value add if we all bring our friends, and there's a big group there. So please do join us next Friday. To begin, Purse Power is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. We believe that if women who make 80% of all purchasing decisions would choose to buy from the companies that actively promote women, and we could create a funding stream for battered women's shelters in the process, that we could shatter glass ceilings and change lives. So that's what we're trying to do at Purse Power. The purpose of the calls, when coronavirus first started, we decided that we really needed to be there for our members and try to support female business owners and leaders, connect you with each other, bring in national experts, and just really support you on this journey that we're all under. And I think our speakers today are going to be amazing, and I just am really excited about the day. I want to call out our special guests, Jennifer Grigsby and Jean Kelly, our investors of Purse Power. So let me describe how the meeting's going to go. So we'll have our speakers introduce themselves. I'll give you a brief background before they do. Please share your comments via chat. And then we do have the Q&A box. What I'd like you to do is just pay attention, capture your questions as we go. And then when the Q&A time comes, then we'll open it up, and we'd love to have you ask the questions. And to begin, let me start with Katy. So Katy is the IT manager of commercial applications at One Gas. She's the outgoing president of the Oklahoma Women in Technology organization, a statewide organization that has the goal of bridging the gender gap in STEM fields, which is so important. She's also an ION Oklahoma 30 Under 30 Next Gen Award winner, and a Journal Record Achievers Under 40 winner as well. These young women are amazing, guys, and I'm delighted that they're here today. Brandy serves as the Senior Director of IT Services and Engagement and PMO for Pinnacle Business Systems. She is a 2018 recipient of the Journal Record Award, 50 Making a Difference, Woman of the Year. And she's dedicated to coaching others on project management and successful projects. She's also known as an advocate for women in technology, and she's currently serving as an advisory board member for the Oklahoma Women in Technology Group, which she co-founded in 2016. She's also the president of CASMEO. Is that the correct way to pronounce it, Brandy?
That's correct, okay. Yeah.
A nonprofit organization that focuses on using STEAM initiatives to help children in Oklahoma who've been experiencing trauma, which that's fantastic. And I want you to mention that, talk a little bit more about that when we do your introduction. And then Ashley is a professional technologist, a STEM advocate, and a podcast host of Coffee and Code, which I love the name. She's a director of technology and integration at Xalter. Is that correct?
Exalter, close.
Exalter, okay. And she worked for Apple for 5 years while Steve Jobs was still there. So that's exciting. She's a TEDx speaker, and she's incoming president of the Oklahoma Women in Technology. She's a 2016 STEM Award recipient for the Next Gen Under 30 program. And she is also part of Oklahoma community and the XR Association, which promotes responsible development and adoption of virtual, augmented, and mixed reality. So we've got some amazing speakers today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. This is really awesome.
All right, very good. Okay, well, generally our folks want to know about you and how you arrived at this place in your life and career, okay? So I'm just gonna go through this in the same order throughout here. So Ashley, would you begin by telling us a little bit more about you beyond the bio?
Yeah, wow, a lot to unpack there. So I kind of found myself in my STEM career kind of accidentally, I would say. I followed my passions along the way, and that just somehow turned out to be a STEM career. When I was about 12 or 13, I would take apart computers, put them back together, really learn how to troubleshoot in my own way. And I had a really good environment for that. I had some amazing teachers that really fostered that innovation and that creativity. So I want to give a shout out to all the teachers out there that are inspiring their children to be creative, especially at home amidst this pandemic. So yeah, because of that great support system, I was able to find my way in STEM and learning how that works together. I really found my start in technology at Apple. So at 20, was I 20? Yeah, 21. I went through 5 rounds of interviews to work at Apple. And during each round of that interview, I learned something new about myself and at the company as well. What I love most about the company is that even if you didn't know all the technical bits of working for the company, they cared more about being able to connect with others, to be able to communicate than they did with technical experience. So technical experience can be learned, right? And I think that translates into a lot of areas that we currently serve as Oklahoma Women in Technology. So with that experience at Apple and that culture, that helped me become inspired to help become an advocate for women in STEM. At the time, we had about 125 employees at the store that I worked at, and maybe 5 to 10% of those people were women. So I started to see at a really young age that, like, hey, I'd like to see more representation here, which led me to Oklahoma Women in Technology. I want to give a shout out to Kim Thomas. Actually, she is the one that introduced me to Oklahoma Women in Technology initially in 2016, and was the first person to reach out to me whenever I started working at the University of Oklahoma in the IT department. So because of her advocacy and her ability to reach out and connect, that led me to this amazing organization. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of such a supportive network, because I truly feel like I'm a part of something bigger than myself, that we can have the ability to make tangible impact, and being able to step into an area of leadership outside from Brandy's leadership and Katy's leadership. It's truly an honor to lead the organization in 2021, especially as we're celebrating our 5 years as an organization, which is pretty incredible. Just thinking about that impact, the scholarships we've been able to give out, the lives we've been able to transform. It's truly a blessing.
Exciting. You guys are doing a wonderful job, and really people need to check you guys out in terms of their interest in joining you. Okay, so Katy, why don't you just give us a little bit more about you?
All right. So I, for one, am the youngest of 6 kids. So it was very much a kind of figure things out on your own, learn from the older kids, whatever I could do on my own or with their examples, I did. And I also would retreat from those older siblings to my grandparents' house. My grandfather was a retired aeronautical engineer. So always tinkering with things, had a garage full of stuff that he could just fix anything, create anything he wanted for you. But he also had a computer, and we didn't have one in the house for the early childhood. And so I would go in the back room, and he just encouraged me to click around, figure things out, played with Microsoft Works a lot, making smiley faces, for instance. And he just really encouraged that creativity and that exploration. And so I always had this aptitude for technology growing up, but totally believe the stereotype. Went into technology, you would be sitting in a room by yourself, the lights off, coding all day. And that just was terrifying to me. I love people. I love talking to people. And so I didn't really think that was a route for me to go. And luckily, as I went to college, my freshman advisor asked me what I wanted to do. And I gave him a list of scattered choices that you didn't really have much connection, but luckily he encouraged me to go into the business school. So in the business school, I found the MIS program and realized I actually enjoyed studying that class. I wanted to keep reading the book. I really enjoyed it. And in that program, learned that in technology, you can work with people. And not only that, in fact, people are the most important part of technology. Without people, the technology doesn't make any sense. So really glad that I ended up in that path, was fully confident when I finally declared my major, haven't looked back since. And as far as OKWIT goes, that was similar to Ashley. I had a friend that encouraged me to get involved with this organization, Diana Barnes. Many of you probably know her. We did a web development boot camp together, and she wouldn't let it go that I needed to join this organization. And so after a couple of months, I finally made my schedule work, and once again, haven't looked back since. It's been a great organization to be a part of, a great group of encouraging people, and getting to make an impact that truly feels good every day.
Fantastic. Well, and that's a great lead in for Brandy, because she's the founder. So Brandy, why don't you talk about yourself?
So my background's a little bit different. I didn't have like an early interest in computers and technology. I was a writer from a very early age, writing poetry, and was interested in journaling and just overall, communication. And so I think what led me into this was my ability to put pen to paper and to communicate what needed to be communicated to the audience. And that combined with my just desire for women to be advocates for themselves and for others. I was on the high school newspaper staff, and some of my clippings from back then even talk about how women need to learn how to, change their own tires and stand up for themselves and stop relying on others to do things for them. So I had that kind of innate desire for women to really step up to the plate from a very early age. My undergrad is in journalism, and actually did an internship for the Pentagon, in Georgetown, or in Washington, D.C. while I was staying at Georgetown. And that led me to start thinking that maybe this wasn't the field that I wanted to go into after all. So I came back home and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I became a real estate appraiser, which I loved, but it wasn't, for me, I'm very process oriented, and there were too many ups and downs in the real estate field. And so it wasn't working for me. So I took my first job in the corporate world as a data analyst, and I didn't even know what that meant. And that led me into leading teams and understanding, the coding behind the software, and just overall IT project management, which has led me now to what I do. And that's managing a team of engineers that install data centers and working for Pinnacle as a technology solutions VAR. The reason why I think OKWIT got started was there just wasn't a lot of women around me, to be honest with you. And there were a few other gals that I work with here at Pinnacle at the time, and we kind of talked about, we know there's other women out there. We know that the technology field has to have them, but where are they? And so we started talking about, wouldn't it be great if we could just get together and maybe have breakfast once a month and kind of hear what they're doing, what their frustrations are, and support each other and advocate for each other so we can grow in our careers. And I mean, literally within 24 hours of starting that conversation, we came up with the idea of starting a nonprofit, maybe having monthly meetings and seeing what we could do to make that happen. And we did within a month. And within probably the first 6 months, we had geared up our collaboration events, our network events, our mentoring, our scholarships for young gals who wanted to go into STEM. And it's just continued to grow from there, thanks to the continued leadership, that you see here from Katy and Ashley. So it's been a great ride.
Fantastic. Well, one of the things I was thinking is we do have an audience that's national in scope. If other states are interested in learning more about what you guys have done and how you did it, are you open to them approaching you and learning more?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So Ashley, let's go ahead and start with the questions here. So with the pandemic, technology has become even more a part of all of our lives. What are the biggest technology trends you've been seeing in response to COVID in particular? And what do you think the long-term implications are?
Great question. And I'm glad that we're starting out with this because I think it's relevant and timely, especially with where we are right now. So there's no doubt that COVID has really shifted the rapid acceleration of certain types of innovative technologies that help us communicate more authentically. Some of the biggest trends that I've personally seen and professionally have seen are implementation of immersive technologies for collaboration, for education, and for training. So immersive technologies, when I say that encompasses virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, which is XR. XR is kind of an emerging term. So I'd like to let people know what that is so they're understanding that XR encompasses augmented reality, virtual reality, which is called immersive technologies. So that's what I've seen. There are several companies that are looking to transition their onboarding process for employees in terms of an educational perspective into virtual reality. We worked on projects with the Air Force in my current role at Exalter, which people are starting to see the legitimate value of immersive technologies in collaboration with things like artificial intelligence and machine learning. There's so much information that can be gathered from these environments and from an individual perspective that can give a lot of insight into education, into training. one of my colleagues slash sheroes slash mentors, Dr. Teresa Cullen, I've been working alongside with her. She used to be the professor at the University of Oklahoma, and we worked very interchangeably on VR in the classroom and VR for education. So since COVID has happened, I've seen more educational institutions be open to adopting this innovative technology for having classroom experiences that extend beyond two-dimensional formats like Zoom or a textbook. But also to be more specific, the efficacy is really interesting. So the current research that is out there is showing up to like 70 to 80% efficacy of VR training after 1 year. So that's a retention rate, 80%, 7 to 80% retention rate after 1 year, which is pretty incredible, especially for vocational training. A lot of jobs that are specific to Oklahoma that are vocational training, that are very technical, that students can't get into the classroom because of COVID. So to kind of wrap that all up and recap, I would say immersive technologies such as VR, AR, and XR, as well as augmented reality or artificial intelligence and machine learning. I feel like those are the biggest technology trends, and they're here to stay. They're not trends for me, because VR, this is kind of like its second coming around. It was kind of ahead of its time whenever it entered the market. And now that technology has really caught up with the ideals and the implementation, it's ready to be like, mass adopted. And with Facebook taking over Oculus, and making these headsets $299 for like an all-in-one headset, that just reduces the barriers to access for people to be able to tangibly work with them, which I think is pretty incredible. So I think VR is here to stay. We're going to see more immersive learning and immersive experiences, especially as we continue to live through these unprecedented times. But I thought that's been really interesting, because my early days have started in virtual reality in about 2018, when I became an emerging technologies librarian at the University of Oklahoma. So I've just seen this like rapid adoption from a headset that's like $2,000 to $3,000 to a headset that's $300 now, just a few years later, that I can buy off of Oculus website. So I think that's pretty profound, and something that people should take into consideration if they're looking at exploring different opportunities to increase efficiency from an education and an enterprise perspective.
I'm going to go ahead and ask this question because it's relevant right now. How do you see accessibility emerging into the XR space?
Oh my gosh. So glad you asked that. So I'm really passionate about immersive experiences being accessible for everyone with abilities. So this organization that I'm a part of, called the XR Association, we're actually working on developing a set of guidelines for practices. So if you're familiar with web standards accessibility, there's a standard called WCAG to make sure your contrast is up to date, your font. There are no standard guidelines for developing immersive experiences. So we're working on actually developing something for developers to implement into their strategies. So for example, what you can do right now, Google Slides has a live closed captioning. Actually, it's completely free. I think that's a tool that some people should know about. Zoom has closed captioning involved as well. But if you're in a position to make decisions on technology and design, make sure that you're asking everyone for their opinion, not just the average user that browses through their device or their computer. Make sure you're expanding that feedback to all groups. So that would be kind of like my roundabout answer to that question.
Nice. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Anyone else want to add to that answer?
I think Ashley did a fantastic job. I mean, she's definitely in the know in those areas, and so I just learned some new stuff from Ashley. Thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
Terrific. Okay, terrific. And again, Ashley Clayton asked that question, so thank you very much. All right, Katy, your turn now. So what impact do you think ubiquitous access to 5G is going to have on our world? Can you give us some sense of the amazing things that we're going to have access to because of it? And then I'm also wondering what kinds of new opportunities, particularly for female entrepreneurs, might there be as a result of 5G?
Sure. So, beyond just having, a happier user experience as you're watching videos on your phone, or if you're a gamer, of course, there'll be faster speeds for those kind of standard things people usually think about. But 5G really expands a lot of areas. So like the Internet of Things. So if your washer telling you that it's time to switch your laundry over. That's kind of what I think of with Internet of Things. So what are the things in our lives that could now be connected that we're already starting to see, but we don't necessarily have all the bandwidth for that to happen. And if you're not in a large city, you might not even have the accessibility to that kind of a network for that to work. 5G will also allow large transmissions of data. So large data files can take a lot of time to send across the world. You can have real-time monitoring of things. You can constantly be checking in with something. Virtual interaction, so to what Ashley was saying. So those are some of the big areas that 5G is impacting, but what is that actually? What are some examples of that? So rural access to healthcare. So you can have more virtual appointments. You can have another Internet of Things type concept. I've got a smartwatch. You can have a smartwatch out in a rural area that can be monitoring some of your health statistics that can be then sent to a specialist across the country, and you don't have to travel to see that specialist. You can have better access to healthcare, especially if you're from a rural area. On those data files, that's an example of the data files. You could have, an X-ray or something. Those images are huge. You can send those images faster and more efficiently. So what Ashley was saying, just the trend of AR. So I didn't know XR. I've learned something new today. So I was saying AR and VR, that virtual reality, that training, education, there's more accessibility and more opportunity for everybody as this network expands. You can have, so I work in the natural gas industry. I think a lot about emergency response. We've improved emergency detection. If you've got constant monitoring, you can catch something sooner. You can respond to it faster if you're getting that information in a timely manner. And I think we'll see a lot as far as just connected supply chains and logistics. And as cars are speaking to one another, I think the supply chain industry is really just going to take advantage of that. And if you get Amazon Prime shipping, you're probably enjoying those notifications that they're 10 stops away. We're going to see more and more of that, and that industry is really going to be able to work together a lot more efficiently, a lot safer. And another example on terms of safety, I really like robotics is going to be more enabled. You can have robotics in remote areas with this kind of connectivity that might be able to complete some dangerous activities that might be nicer to not have a human involved. If there's something combustible or something just really tricky and risky, you can keep a human out of that scenario and have them remote with a robot handling some of that work for you. There's a slew of examples. There's really so much opportunity. I think it's really going to step up our technology game just across the nation, and it'd be a great equalizer as well.
Yeah. Lynn Harden talked to me about the fact that they might be able to have surgeons across the country doing surgery on someone in another place as a result. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. All right. Other additions you guys want to make? Any other comments?
Yeah, for the mention of surgery, actually, there are some countries that do implement like virtual surgery before they graduate from medical school, which I think is really interesting, that they're already incorporating that as okay, you need to do this. That I don't know, that tells me that, other countries are also seeing the value in that type of collaboration, which is really neat.
Holy smokes, right? The quality of healthcare could be consistent no matter where you are in the world. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right, Brandy, your turn. The percentage of women in college computer science programs in the 80s was around 34%. Nowadays, that number is down to around 18%, with 75% of the jobs plus needing technology skills. What happened, and what do we do about it?
Well, I think it's twofold. First, the number of technology jobs has gone up. And second, the number of applicants has remained the same, if not dropped. So you're going to see a wider gap in that range because of those two reasons. I can tell you that part of the focus for Oklahoma Women in Technology is advocating the women who do get into STEM and keeping them there, because women have a much higher lack of retention rate to stay in the technology realm. They leave IT 2 times faster than men. And it's not to, stay at home or just, to quit working. It's because they're choosing another opportunity. They're choosing another career field. And the reasons that they cite most often are lack of opportunity, which for those of us who work in technology think that's crazy, because there's ample amount of opportunity. but they feel like they're being passed up. They feel like there is gender bias, whether that's conscious or subconscious. And so therefore they're not giving the opportunities that will help them grow in their career. There's also kind of a culture factor that plays into that. It can be tough for a lot of women if you're the only woman in the room. And there's kind of a different set of roles. And so I think just changing the overall culture and being aware of that for women, that they're looking for opportunity that they may not be getting, and that's why they're leaving the IT field, is the best way to tackle keeping them in that field to begin with. But before we even talk about that, we have to talk about how to get them into the field. And that starts at a really young age. Middle school is kind of the target age group to get young girls interested in STEM. And it's interesting because they show that they are very interested in math and science up until about junior high. And then something happens, something changes. And there's a lot of studies that say, well, that's because of society. You know, society gears women towards more, for me, for instance, journalism. But I don't know that that's really fair, because for me, communication and writing came natural, and that's why I chose it, not because somebody steered me away from science and math. But they talk about, well, even if that's the case, what can we do to gear the STEM careers towards these young girls? And so some of the things that I've seen that have worked are campaigns that are targeted specifically to get the young girls interested in the STEM classes in their junior high. And Katy mentioned earlier that, she didn't go for that goal because she thought, that type of career would be sitting in a dark room by herself, and that sounded horrible. Mm-hmm. So if the campaign is geared towards helping these young women understand what a career in STEM could really look like, then that will help spark interest. And then also something else that I found interesting is if the IT teacher is a woman, they will get more female students, enrolled in those classes, or eager to take those classes, or more interested in participation. So I think that we have to really look at, what are we doing to get young girls interested in STEM? And that's something that OKWIT focuses on through our spring and fall retreats, where we show them all different types of awesome careers that they could have. And we have women who are in those professions come in and work with the young ladies, so they can see them as role models that are already doing it. But then, keep them engaged and keep them interested. And then one of the things that OKWIT does is, once these young girls choose a STEM career or choose a college education path that's STEM focused, we give them a scholarship. They can apply for a scholarship, so they can know that there's this whole network behind them that's saying, yes, go for it. And that's how we have to get more women into the pipeline, is to be actively aware.
Right. Well, and I've always heard, if they can't see it, they can't be it. So
right.
Having people see examples is a great point. Anyone else want to add any comments?
Yeah, I'll add to that. I mean, Brandy, you kind of touched base on our fall and spring retreat. So just to kind of expand upon that for people that aren't familiar, I think it's important to mention the benefit of that. Honestly, for me, those events are like Christmas, because it's so amazing to see young women make that connection of, oh, I want to be a graphic designer. That's in STEM. I don't think a lot of young women see the connection of how broad a STEM career can be. So they don't identify themselves as being, a STEM, enthusiast or STEM career. So I think having these retreats is so pivotal for helping girls and young women understand what a career in STEM looks like. I remember when Emily Sutton came and spoke at one of our retreats, she talked about, her journey into STEM and being the first female meteorologist at Channel 4, and just sharing that, you could kind of see the shift in the audience of, okay, I like STEM. STEM is cool. It's okay to be nerdy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Embrace who you really are. And I think those events are just so important for us to continue to spread that, because that, like Brandy mentioned, is a very pivotal age to grasp that that understanding and that knowledge, and for young girls to be able to see, oh wow, that's what a successful career in technology looks like, no matter if you're a doctor or you're a mathematician or a scientist or a web developer or a veterinarian. These are all interconnected. And I think it's just so important that we support and uplift each other and provide that positive environment that will not just get women in STEM, but keep them there too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got a daughter in STEM, and she's saying, "Man, I don't want to be in a lab all day every day." And so I'm trying to help her understand there's a whole lot more things that you can do with that.
Oh yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
All right. So Ashley, I want to ask you the next question. So most of the women on the call, or a lot of the women on the call, are business owners. What are some of the most valuable go-to technology tools you've seen to help small businesses compete with bigger businesses? And then how do we keep our skills up to date? I mean, it feels like it's just moving so fast.
Yes. So I thought about this question a lot last night, Donna, and I was like, okay, let me think about this. Well, I think the answer is going to depend on what field that you're in, because there are a lot of different tools that can benefit you in different ways. But I boiled it down to, like, I wanted to share some of my tools that I use that I think are helpful and accessible to small businesses. So I'm all about automation, using technology for good and using technology to make your life easier rather than a barrier. So some of the tools are discipline agnostic but useful. So I use Grammarly. I think Grammarly is really an important plugin to use. I gifted myself the premium subscription as like my birthday gift in November, and that has been like completely transformative for helping to polish my communication. Calendly is another tool that I think is great for business users. So if you do multiple things and have multiple calendars, Calendly is great for helping you schedule seamlessly. I hate going back and forth on emails all the time to try to find a date. So sending a Calendly link helps you integrate all of your calendars so that the person that you're talking to can quickly schedule a time that works for you. So Grammarly, Calendly. Also, Smart Post is really important. I think it's a free, accessible tool. You can integrate your LinkedIn pages, your Facebook pages, your Instagram pages, and basically schedule your posts out for a week or a month, whatever works for you. If you're a small business owner and you run lean, you know that these automation tools will save you in the long run. Location-based reminders are also a tip. So using tools that are native to your devices, whether that's an iOS or Android. When I say location-based reminders that take care of you wherever you are. So I can set a location-based reminder to remind me to pick up my medication on the way home, or to make sure that I schedule XYZ. Those are really important for me. And MindNode is the last one I wanted to share. So MindNode is a really good strategy for kind of mapping out things that are that may be difficult for when you're working in teams. So MindNode is great, where you can start with a concept and start to branch out. It's good for collaboration and just ideation. So to kind of recap that, Grammarly, Calendly, Smart Post, location-based reminders, and MindNode. And to stay up to date on the latest technology trends, I love TechCrunch newsletters, as well as 9to5mac.com. Great tutorials there. The Verge, Engadget, YouTube tutorials, they're the greatest resource of all time. And my shameless plug for my podcast, Coffee and Code. So I do a weekly podcast to keep people up to date on the rapidly evolving tech news that impacts everyone. So that comes out every Wednesday. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, but the goal there is just to help people understand technology and demystify what it can do. So if anyone has questions about that specifically, I'm happy to dive into a little bit further, but that's my answer there.
Okay, would you please go ahead and put that in the chat? Put all those locations in the chat if you would. All right, anybody else want to add to that? I'd love to hear what other tools you think are great, guys.
She listed so many great ones. One ad I have is something like Popular Science that explores kind of like what's technology or innovation that may be happening that's 5 or 6 years out. I discovered this years and years ago at my getting my car work done in the waiting room, and they had a 5-year-old magazine, and I was looking at it, and it was stuff that was being marketed by car companies at that time. Like, it was on a commercial on the TV screen, and I'm reading about it, but it was written about 5 years prior. Look, this is the entrepreneurial group. You want to get on the cutting edge of the next big thing, right? So as much as you can, finding things like Popular Science or some of the resources Ashley found, that you can just be ahead of the game and find some of those new things and get to be creative with your ideas.
Thank you. That's really good advice. All right, Katy, you're next up. So do you see women as having any unique advantages in technological fields? And if we do have advantages, what are they? And how do we take advantage? How do we capitalize on them?
These traits are far from exclusive just to women. We're all different and have our own personalities. But in general, research does show that women tend to be more empathetic and have more of that emotional intelligence angle that they can bring to a team and working with people. Typically very strong communicators and storytellers. So storytelling is a huge thing in the entrepreneurial community. And just in general, more collaborative nature. So women, a lot of these things are kind of more that soft skill angle, and those soft skills are so important with building relationships and bringing a balanced team together. But like I said, men can have those traits too. This is just a generalization. And kind of a side note, because of some of the barriers that women have getting into STEM fields, you've got some really driven people that have made it that are already working in this industry. So if you need anyone who's really determined and dedicated, you can look to women working in the STEM field because they probably have got that trait. But just in general, I think it's all about having a balanced and diverse team, whether it's a working team with individual contributors or up on the executive level making strategic decisions for a company. Having a diverse team brings improved decision making and problem solving. It fosters new ideas and perspectives. As you mentioned, women have the majority of buying power. So we should have a woman's perspective in developing a product or a service, in developing processes in your company. That you can really drive innovation and competitiveness within your team if you've got a diverse team. And with technology, we're solving new problems. Entrepreneurs are solving new problems every day. So we need to have a diverse thought processes to solve those problems and make sure that you've got that human-centered design in whatever it is that you're doing, and you're solving real problems for the biggest group of people that you can. But research shows that the diverse companies outperform. And it's because of that diverse thought that they're building all of their processes, design, and problem solving around.
Absolutely.
So the second part of the question, how can women capitalize on that? And if you're an employer, how can you capitalize on your women? I think you need to know how to market it. And it's easy to say, yes, good communicators, but what does that mean? Know how to market that. Say, I'm a great communicator. I can build relationships with new customers. I can foster maintaining relationships with customers. Just figuring out whatever it is that you can market that skill set, how you can bring that to the table for either a potential employer or a potential customer. Knowing how to market that is really key.
Amazing. Fantastic. Great insight. Okay. Other comments? Brandy, did you
have? I would add to that. Before we got started here, Katy said, Brandy, you always have statistics. And I said, yeah, I didn't bring any stats with me to this one, but I fibbed because I do have one. And it adds on to what Katy was sharing. And so this is from a recent McKinsey report that shows, diverse teams, and this is both with gender and ethnicity, but diverse teams who have, a proven diversity within their executive teams were 33% more likely to outperform on profitability and 27% more likely to outperform just with general, the value creation of the product or the solution that they're presenting. And it's because of that diverse thought that Katy was kind of going through.
Absolutely. Well, it blows me away too. We make 80% of all purchasing decisions. Why on earth wouldn't you want women in technology or at the senior executive level representing the customer? Okay, Brandy, you're up now. So you've led an organization, created an organization devoted to women in technology. When you hear from your members, what are their primary challenges and barriers to success, and what can we as leaders do to help?
So that's a good question. And I think if you were to ask me or Katy or Ashley, we would all kind of have our own answers to that based on the members that came to us and talked to us. But I think one of the kind of reoccurring themes that I saw is just lack of support within the field or within their company. And so one of the things that I like to talk about a lot is the importance of mentorship. And it doesn't matter what age you are or what area, a field you are in with your career, but mentorship is so important. And it's mentorship up and mentorship down. And so I always encourage the members and just, in general, people that I speak with, get a mentor. And it doesn't have to be a formal process. It could be simply asking somebody for advice that you admire and respect. Female mentors obviously are very important to other females. I did not actually obtain female mentors for myself until the last, 4 to 5 years when we started OKWit. My mentors have always been men. But on that note, I think it's important for women to also have the male mentors, because they bring to us a different perspective and help us see challenges in a different way that we may not view it, simply because of the gender discrepancy. And so if we don't, first and foremost, recognize that we are not all created equal, we all have different ways of looking at things and different ways of approaching things, and that in itself is beautiful, but we need to recognize it, and say that that's okay. And so how a male peer may approach a situation could be different than how a female peer would approach a situation. So it's good to get advice from both and kind of do what feels right for you and how you lead your own choices and as you grow in your own career. But mentorship, support, and advocacy to me is the most important thing, and also one of the biggest hurdles that I personally see with a lot of our members.
Well, thank you for creating the opportunity for everyone. It's very, very important. Other thoughts, Ashley or Katy?
Yeah, I want to basically speak to that personally, Brandy, the mentorship piece there. Whenever OKWit kicked off the first formal mentorship opportunity, I think it was 2017, I still meet with my mentor to this day because of that mentorship program. My mentor, Peggy Geib, she's been so instrumental in my personal and professional life. And if it weren't for that mentorship opportunity, I don't think I would be where I am today. Like, that is how important that mentorship relationship is, and it was and is to me. And I was able to see the value there to be able to understand, okay, I need to be mentoring others as well. It's like, it's a two-way street, right? And I think a lot of people maybe overthink the process of mentorship. Like you said, it doesn't have to be formal. It can be, a touch base every week or every month, whatever works for you. I think there should be more flexibility and understanding about what a mentorship relationship looks like, and that diversity in perspective, diversity in thought, diversity and age and background and gender, I think is incredibly important as well. So I think my advice to like the people on the call is, like, if you're wanting a mentor, find someone that you look up to, that you could see yourself, in that career in the future, and just reach out to them. I have one of my mentees. She is a MIS senior at the University of Oklahoma. She actually just reached out to me on LinkedIn last year and was like, hey, I'm about to graduate with my MIS degree and I'm interested about pursuing a career in STEM. Would you be open to mentoring me? And I was like, okay, one, good for you for reaching out for that relationship. And two, absolutely. Because that's what we're here for. And that's what we should be doing, is like uplifting others so that they don't, leave their STEM careers or degrees. So yeah, I love what you mentioned there, Brandy. And I think mentorship is so important. That's like the one piece of advice I give everyone, is like, find a mentor. So it's because of OKWit that I have been able to, one, find a mentor, and two, be able to mentor others. So Brandy, thank you and Cynthia Rolfe, Dr. Cynthia Rolfe, she's incredibly instrumental in that mentorship relationship. So I'm just very thankful for that. So thank you, Brandy, for making sure that was a pivotal part of OKWit. And thank you, Katy, for continuing on to carry that torch of mentorship as an important pillar of OKWit.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. We're running out of time. I know people are going to want to ask you guys some questions. So please go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A box while I ask one more of Katy. So Katy, it's scary how much information and power big technology companies have right now, and particularly with the divisiveness in the country, I think that it has led to some of that. What are the primary things we need to be doing to protect ourselves, both individually and our companies as business owners?
Yeah, so this is definitely the flip side of the 5G question. Like, that was the excitement, and here's the reality. So especially as we're putting more and more of our data out there, we do need to be thinking about how that's being protected. One thing is, personally, think of that data that you're giving someone as your property. You are giving someone something from your home and handing it to them and trusting that they're taking care of it. Think of it as a tangible thing. It's beyond just your social security number. It's everything about you. It's how you make your decisions that they're getting access to. So that's kind of first thing, just to realize that and think about that. It's easy on Facebook. You see people taking a quiz, and it's kind of like, well, what did you just give that company access to from your Facebook profile? And if you're comfortable doing that, great. Just make that conscious decision. Don't just move on without thinking about it. something I think we're going to start seeing a lot more, and my director at work is really into this, so I've talked to him about this quite a bit, is seeing personas online. So you may do this a little bit now if you've got, here's the email address I use for the important stuff, the bank accounts, the TurboTax, this is my financial information. I'm not going to have that same email address for Facebook or maybe a gaming website. So start thinking of that, separating those worlds a little bit. We'll probably see some of that come from companies in the future, and maybe some of your companies too. You might think about persona development for your users if you have users. And then you can have different privacy levels on those different personas. So I could say, this is my blogging persona, and this is what I'm willing to share in my blogging persona. But my financial persona, I'm going to have it pretty locked down and not share much about it. So try not to cross those worlds too much. If you start doing that now, it might be more natural to do that when the industry follows. And be conscious of things like Alexa and Google. I have them in my home, but if you know how to turn them off if you feel like you need to have a private conversation, that because they are always listening, and I truly hope and believe they're not doing anything evil with that, but they are listening, and they're definitely, think about it as someone standing outside of your door. So you want someone random like the mailman hearing everything you're saying? Probably not. So just know how to turn those off. That's a simple thing you can do. And then if you're really passionate about this, you can start contacting your legislators and encouraging policy that will drive data privacy laws. So you may or may not have heard of things going on in Europe. They're really driving a lot of this change that companies are doing. And then at California as well. So California passed a Privacy Act that requires that companies share, or that you as a customer or user can go to the company and say, I need to know what data you have on me and who you've shared it with. What third parties have you shared my information with? I think that's a really important thing to be able to do. And we just don't have the laws in the United States right now that way. So you start asking for it. Call your legislators, let them know that, hey, this is important to me, and hopefully drive some of that conversation and change.
Very good. Very good. Any final comments from the others on her answer?
The only other thing that I would add to that, and I think that was a great kind of rundown there, Katie. The only other thing that I would add to that is, if you're starting a company, or if you have a company that that essentially you're in charge of the security of it, ensure that the data that you're saving, filing, sending out, that's coming in, that you have a secure infrastructure, from firewalls, web filtering, some sort of SOC appliance that can monitor traffic, et cetera. Really look at what you can do, if you're not already doing so, to secure the data of your company.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. I want to open it up now, but I also want to acknowledge Bonnie Daniker. She's out of Atlanta. They've got a women in technology organization too that maybe we should get you guys connected with. All right. Please add who you'd like to have me ask the question of, if you don't mind. But Julie Villa is asking, I have 2 middle school boys. What do I do to help girls get the message? And whoever would like to answer, go ahead.
I'll start with that one, and then Ashley and Katie can add on. So I have a daughter and I have a son, and my approach is a little bit different with them. With my daughter, I focus on, hey, math is cool, science is cool, let's get you engaged, let's talk about coding. With my son, it's a little bit different. It's about how many girls were in your your STEM project class, and did you encourage them, and did you root them on, and so my approach with them is a little bit different. So I think just kind of a short answer on that one is, one, you can always reach out to schools around you, Girl Scouts or other organizations where they're involved in getting young gals interested in STEM, and just volunteer and let young girls see, who you are and what you're doing, and become a role model. That's the first way. But the other way is to talk to your boys and to help them understand the dilemma that we have with the lack of female applicants for these technology fields, and get them to talk to their friends who are females and encourage them and be supportive, because male advocacy for women is critical.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great point. Great point. Any other insights?
Just add on to that. Oh.
No, go ahead.
I have 3 older brothers that are my biggest advocates. And some of my male managers have been my biggest advocates. You can, just as Brandy said, make sure that your boys aren't listening to those stereotypes, and that they're encouraging females as well. If they can be an advocate for someone else, that's huge and amazing.
Ashley, it sounds like you had something to say too.
Yeah, and there's a book called Women in Tech by Tara Wheeler Van Vlag. There's actually a chapter in there for men being allies for women in tech. I think that can also be translated for helping young boys understanding how to be allies for girls in tech. So that book is Women in Tech by Tara Wheeler Van Vlag, and there is a specific chapter for men to be allies for women in the STEM fields.
Outstanding. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so Ashley Clayton is asking, how do you think a lot of these policies will affect small businesses' ability to compete with their marketing dollars on the available ad platforms? Facebook has been a great equalizer for helping entrepreneurs connect with the ideal customer base. I think that's some of the pressure that they're getting around confidentiality and protection of data. Anybody want to take that?
So one idea that my director has, and he's probably read this as a trend somewhere, but is that we as consumers allow people to purchase our data. And it doesn't have to be a big expense. It can be a small expense, but there's a transaction there that can be a small transaction, but will be something that you get what you have today, but represents something and a trust that you can actually build with your customer that you're not necessarily getting today when they click a button blindly.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Why don't I go ahead and ask Case this question here. Case is asking, how should a mentee prepare to get the most out of a mentorship relationship?
Let me start. Okay. Let me start with that one. But then I think Ashley, her mentorship experience is just like, it's phenomenal to hear. So I want to kind of like intro into Ashley. For me, what I found is to be honest and communicate upfront what you're wanting, to be direct, say, here's where I'm at now. Here's where I'm trying to get. This may be some feedback that I've gotten. I don't know if I agree with it, but it is what it is. What do you think I can do differently? And then just continue to have those conversations and say, well, this is how this is going. How can I change maybe the view that others have of me? For instance, I'm an introvert, and so I get viewed oftentimes as somebody who is withdrawn or unfriendly. And I really struggle with that because inside I'm thinking, I have so much love for you. You're an amazing person. But the way they're viewing me is, she's not very nice. And so that's some of the feedback that I've gotten. And so I get told, smile more, because that makes people feel more comfortable with you, that, you're really engaged. So just kind of talk about some of the struggles that you may be having with others, but be direct and upfront and communicate what it is that you're wanting to get out of it, and just be honest. But I defer to Ashley because I think she has a great experience.
Thank you. No, I think that's incredibly important. In order to be prepared as a mentee and as a mentor, you need to understand and have some self-reflection of what it is that you want to work on. Like, what are your goals? They don't have to be goals. It's important to focus on the journey rather than the destination. So typically, like a methodology that I use for mentees is the Strengths Finder 2.0. I have them take that assessment as like a baseline assessment to understand their strengths and like how to work from there. But also it's about making sure a mentee gets what they need out of that relationship. So like being upfront about those things, I think, is really important, and being vulnerable about what your weaknesses are. A mentee mentor relationship doesn't have to be perfectly polished all the time. The purpose is to have those difficult conversations and to have those real conversations to really grow both personally and professionally. So that's a great question. The person that asked it, thank you.
Really important one. All right, guys, we are running out of time. So let's see, I think I get to ask one more here. Let's see here. So how do you handle people that want to link with you on LinkedIn, but you have no financial or educational similarities? So when you get requests, how do you vet who approaches you? Anybody want to start?
I'll be honest, I accept all invitations.
Are you inviting everybody on the call?
Of not accepting if I've never met you, or it seems like a sales pitch. I think being in the technology, you get a lot of kind of headhunters. But then I go through phases where I accept everyone also. So if anyone actually has a great answer here, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like this landscape of like LinkedIn. Like, is it a social media platform? Is it a professional platform? It's like melded together. I've received a huge influx of requests from random people over the past year. And it's interesting when I look at the inbox, I'm like, where are all the women here in these LinkedIn requests? It's a lot of men, and it's a lot of sales pitches. So lately I've been a little bit more selective about that, because I've noticed if I connect with someone somewhere down the road, someone will reach out to me and say, hey, I see that you're connected. Can you speak to this person's technical expertise or integrity? And if I'm like, I don't even know this person, and I'm asking myself, why am I connected to them? Like, what value are we both getting out of this relationship? So I'm trying to be a little bit more intentional about that, but there really is no right answer. It's about what I think you're wanting to get out of LinkedIn that will dictate that.
Right. That's a great answer. Okay, guys, we are actually coming to the close of the program. So what I want to ask each of you is, I want you to say at the end of the day, what do you want people to have learned from you, and what action do you want to have them take? And why don't I start with you, Katy, because you're on the screen.
Oh, great. I'd say, think outside of your normal box. Think about other people's experience and how you can bring diverse thought into your world, whether it's work or personal life. Encourage diverse conversation in your life to grow the way that you're thinking.
Okay. Let's see here. All right, Brandy, how about you? Top learnings, top actions.
For me, the biggest takeaway is, be an advocate for somebody, and find out what it is that they're trying to achieve and help them get there. Advocate for somebody else other than for yourself, and it comes back to you. So be an advocate.
Okay. All right, Ashley, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, be an advocate. And I have this coffee mug that reminds me every day. Women supporting women. It's so important that we do that now more than ever. We need to uplift and support each other and be advocates for one another.
It's so true. There's a hashtag Women Supporting Women tag that's being used around the world. I would really encourage people to use it and put it on the bottom of everything you're posting, because we can go so far, for heaven's sakes, if we'll support each other. Okay, any final parting thoughts? Please share.
Thank you for this opportunity. This was amazing, and I hope the audience got some good tangible takeaways on it. I certainly enjoyed this time, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, Donna, thanks for being a woman supporting women.
Absolutely. Thank you again, you guys. And if you're willing to share your contact information, if you go ahead and put it in the chat, I'd appreciate it. And let me go ahead and close up the program here. All right. So I want to remind everyone, thank you again for being here, by the way. I want to remind everyone that we have some upcoming programs, and next week is a networking session. We want to grow this, guys. So we'd really ask, the price of admission is to bring a friend. The bigger this group is, the more discussion that we have, the more people you're in front of, the better it is for you. So please bring a friend and come next Friday. And you can always register for these events on our homepage, pursepower.com. We've got a button right on the front page, and you can register for whatever we're doing that Friday. On February 5th, I'm going to have Francine Sears here. She is amazing. She's an entrepreneur and a half. She does women in business bags, and she creates all the bags, computer bags for Dell and HP. She is a CEO. She's also on a number of boards, and she's amazing. So she's going to be our guest on the 5th. And then on February 12th, I'm going to have Elizabeth Hutt Pollard here. She's the CEO of Allied Silver, and she's also Secretary for Science and Innovation for our state. She's on a number of boards as well. Very, very impressive women. Really is going to share some interesting thoughts. If you qualify for directory listing, you have a company that has a female CEO or president, or is half owned by a woman, or has at least 20% women on the board, please sign up for a directory listing. You can have a free listing at pursepower.com. We do have a Google Chrome extension that if you download on your Google Chrome browser, it will show you which companies are in our directory as you shop online. And we want to really encourage you to buy from women-owned and women-led businesses. That's what we're all about. So if they've got women owners, CEOs, if they've got women in power, let's support them with revenue. That is the fastest way to drive change. Please like and share our social media pages. Please make your friends aware of these events that we're doing every Friday, because they're for you. And we really appreciate you helping to get the word out. Okay, any final thoughts or comments, panelists?
Thank you.
Go forth and conquer.
Go forth and conquer. There we go. You guys have been amazing. This was a wonderful program. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, please remember, Purse Power, we have it. Let's use it. See you next Friday. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.